Hi, I'm Dave Hilgendorf. I'm here with David Jesse from Promise Keepers, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Promise Keepers. David, can you start out by telling me a little bit about who you are and how you got involved with Promise Keepers and what your role is in the organization?
David Jesse just was a regular church guy that was in business and business development, sales management, sales training. God got a hold of my life in 2008 through some pretty unusual circumstances. And so I got involved with Promise Keepers by basically sending a to whom it may concern letter to the organization saying, hey, this is what God's been doing in my life. Thank you for what you guys are doing. And next thing you know, Dr. Washington, who's president and CEO of Promise Keepers, called me up, asked if I could come in and talk with him a little bit, share more of my story. We just hit it off right then and there, and before the end of the conversation that afternoon, they were asking me if I wanted to come on staff. And so I've been on board since January 2009 is when I started with them. My role at this point, I've kind of done a number of things over the years that I've been with Promise Keepers. I did some development work with us, and then strategic relationships, partnerships with other organizations, and then in August of last year they asked me to step into the vice president role for field operations. So I handle basically everything that happens outside the offices. I'm responsible for guiding and directing. So the events, the promotion of the events, the follow-up, all that. That's what I do with Promise Keepers. So,
Great. So, can you give us a little bit of the history of Promise Keepers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Promise Keepers was started in 1991 as as Coach McCartney was at the height of his football career.
Mm-hmm.
He was coaching the University of Colorado Buffaloes. They were a top 5 program every year. Just won a national championship, and he was on the way to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes banquet in Pueblo, Colorado. He was driving with another guy, and as they were driving, they had a conversation about what needs to happen in the lives of men. And Coach Mack thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could find a way to get 50,000 men in one environment, just worshiping the Lord together, not worrying about race, not worrying about denomination, not worrying about age, just worshiping together. And it was birthed in that. By 1993, we had 55,000 men in the Folsom Field in Boulder, Colorado. Over the years since then, we've had over 6 million men attend our events, including 1.4 million at Stand in the Gap in Washington, D.C. in 1997. It's been an amazing thing. Most of the time when people hear about Promise Keepers today, and I'm telling them that we're coming to their city, the most common response I get is, I didn't know you guys were still around. And I think one of the reasons behind that is guys have a tendency to say, hey, I've been there and I've done that. They've gone to the events, they've experienced that, and they don't think they need to do it anymore. Sometimes that has to do with just our apathy as men, but other times it has to do with they're worried about, they know what happens in their life when they come to an event. They know they're going to be confronted with some things that they don't want to acknowledge are going on in their life. And after they've come to an event and they've repented of those things, and then sometimes we fall off and fall back into some of those ways that we had before, the idea of coming back and knowing you're going to get confronted with those things again is very difficult for some men. And so we've had some challenges with that. But we're excited to see this, that starting about 2012, we saw a shift again. 97, after Stand in the Gap, things started to decline pretty rapidly, and they stayed in a decline for a while. And then in 2012, we started to see things pick up again. And I think the reason behind that is there's a whole new generation of guys that are hearing about Promise Keepers, and we're doing some things a little bit differently as far as the follow-up, so that we can help them continue the momentum of the events, which is really important. But last year, we had over 50% of our attendance were first-time attendees, and they were under the age of 30. And so that's exciting. Yeah. What's also exciting is they're hearing, as we deal with these younger generation of men, we're able to come alongside them with an older generation that's been through Promise Keepers that can say to them, listen, when I was 30 years old or I was 25 years old, I was dealing with the same issues that you're dealing with today, and here's what I'm doing, and I've been doing over the years to help overcome some of these challenges and stresses and become a better father, better husband, better man. And so we're able to sort of allow that older generation to mentor that younger generation. We're seeing some real success with that. So we're excited about what God's doing right now.
Would you say Promise Keepers is to a large extent about these big events still?
Yeah, it's a catalytic ministry. Promise Keepers for years tried. The biggest knock on Promise Keepers is accurate, and that is, it's a large scale event. Guys come in and they get all stirred up, but then what happens afterwards? And we get that. So for years we thought it was our responsibility to do the follow up, to do the back end ourselves, and we tried to create programs, create curriculum, create strategies for churches in order to handle that follow-up. And sometimes you have to understand what God's called you to do.
Right.
In Promise Keepers, we are called to be a catalytic large-scale event. We take men out of their environment, take them out of their comfort zone. We hit them with the truth and allow God to work in their lives. And so we had to start focusing in 2012. We returned to that focus where we just said, you know what, we're going to do these events. We're going to do them right, let God do what He wants to do in these events. And then we're going to partner with other organizations that are called and anointed for small group discipleship, for what happens after the event. And we're going to make sure that we do that handoff effectively so that those organizations that are called to do that and gifted to do that are able to succeed in that area. And so that's why we're working with like Third Option Men this year. They're a great organization of guys that are gifted at doing that. So.
Well, that was going to be my next question too. Is it seems like since I went to my first Promise Keepers many years ago, that there's just been an explosion of these types of groups.
Absolutely.
That are designed to take that next step.
Absolutely. There's been over 100 national Christian men's organizations that have been birthed out of Promise Keepers. Either people that were on staff with Promise Keepers or people that we worked with to help launch those organizations. So that's great. There's organizations all around that can do that. And so that's why it's important for us as we reach into this new season is to understand that we don't need to be controlling all of that God's already birthing that out there. And so let people have those resources and work with them on that. So
that's great. Yeah. So if men want to get involved with Promise Keepers, what do you recommend they do?
Best thing that they can do is go to either iTunes or go to the Google Play Store and download the Promise Keepers app, because when that app has daily content. Third Option Men writes a blog that's posted 5 days a week in there. We've got video, we got podcasts on a weekly basis. So all of the things that they need to do to maintain, a vibrant walk with God. We're integrating YouVersion into the app as we speak. We've got some other things that are going on with a Bible reading plan that's going to be integrated into that. So that's one way that it doesn't matter if we're coming to their city or not, they can connect with Promise Keepers on a daily basis and get the encouragement that they need and some tools for that. And then, as we come into their cities, they're going to get notified through that app about the events that are coming up. And we've in 2015 we've got a pretty extensive schedule that's coming out. We're going to be in 8 different cities in 2015 and 12 in 2016. So we're going to be going national again in a pretty big way in the next couple of years. And so that through the app they're going to be able to connect with that and find out about those events. So.
Sounds like PK is growing to me.
It is. It's back. It really is. It really is back, and we're really excited about what God has in store. We've had Coach Mack even this year. He said, he feels like God's saying that the best days of Promise Keepers are ahead of us, and that's pretty exciting to think about when you think about 6 million men having come through the doors of our events. To think that the best days are ahead of us, we're pretty excited about.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll include a link for how getting access to that app
Thank you.
when I post this interview. So
awesome.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you.
Okay.